Barbara and I would like to welcome you all. And as we have a lot of people on the call, I've put everybody on mute to avoid background noise. We would love interaction, but just do it in the chat, which Barbara and I will both monitor. And we'll allow time for some questions at the end. So let's get into it. There. So over the next 60 minutes, we're going to explore how to leverage your time and effort to get great clients in 90 days, how to establish yourself as the leading authority in your niche markets, and how to pre-sell prospects so they don't have to hard sell. So first things first, we're not going to sell anything today, so just relax, take notes. We will provide a replay so that you can go over this afterwards anyway. So who is this for? Essentially, we've targeted this towards professional service firms, owners, consultants, people who sell a complex, often intangible, higher cost solution, which are often difficult to explain the value in terms where your prospects go. I get it, I understand that, and I want to do business with you. The sorts of people that we tend to work with are financial services, stockbrokers, financial planners, accountants, a lot of IT professionals in the SaaS space, AI space, engineers, and even leadership and executive coaches, interestingly enough, and even sales trainers, believe it or not. So, quick brief bio for those of you who don't know us. Over the last 20 years, Barbara and I have coached and mentored aspirational business owners in over 50 industries. And having worked with this very wide range from solo consultants, small businesses, to even multinationals allows us to bring a breadth of experience to the table. We know what works and can rapidly home in on where organizations need to improve their marketing and sales systems, which at the end of the day is helps our clients achieve whatever it is that they want out of their businesses, which tends to be one of a number of currencies, which are money, more time, if you're in the corporate world, more status, recognition, promotion, and lifestyle. So I'm going to assume you're here because you have a lot of experience and you'll have a lot of expertise in your own area, but you're not growing at the rate that you'd like because you're not generating enough quality business. Now, that could be due to ineffective lead generation or an ineffective sales process. But as a result, you tend to have an inconsistent cash flow. You're constantly chasing your tail, looking for new business, and you're vulnerable. And very often what we see, especially with professional services people, is a feast and famine. You get a big project, you get involved in the project, and you stop marketing, prospecting, and selling. And therefore, when that project comes to an end, all of a sudden you're scrambling for the next one. But as any farmer or any gardener will tell you, there is a big difference, there's a big gap between sowing and reaping. So you've got to plant the seeds and then the business comes in maybe weeks, months, sometimes even years later. So unless you're constantly running the cycle of sowing, prospecting, marketing, reaping, you will have this feast and famine. So the people we want obviously want a steadily growing cash flow or a consistent flow of ideal clients and control over your own destiny. So everyone has competition. So the big question is, why would a prospect choose you? How do you differentiate yourself? How will your potential clients recognize your expertise and uniqueness? Because unless you make yourself distinct, you will be perceived as a commodity. And commodities get chosen on price. That's just the way it is. I mean, we choose toothpaste as a commodity. We don't, and it comes down to a price. So you've got to be able to be in a position that you can differentiate yourself, claim your uniqueness, and say, this is what I stand for. And when you do this, you actually ensure that the first sale is actually to yourself, so that you actually believe that you are the best at what you do in this particular area. So when we work with our clients, we help you distill your own IP, what makes you unique. We help you package it up commercially, because it's one thing to have the IP and it's one thing to have the knowledge and expertise. But if you can't actually package it up commercially in a way that people will pay you, not much is going to happen. And then we help you take it to market. Does that make sense? You can put a yes, no, I'm going too fast, I'm going too slow in the chat box by all means. So this is an example of, Barbara, you want to just check that nobody's in the waiting room? Just have a look. Participants.
I'm happy to do that. I'm not entirely sure how to do that, but
okay, no one seems to be there. That's fine.
I can't see anything.
Okay, no, that's fine. Now I've lost the chat box. This is wonderful. So
I've got it here. That's fine.
Okay.
Don't worry about it.
All right. So this is an example of one of our clients. He is a financial planner. He's been around. He's got 30 years experience in the financial planning business. But when we started working with him, and this is, I want to talk about the power of positioning here. When we started working with him, he was a generalist financial planner. And speaking with him over, we found that he actually had a really deep expertise in aged care. He had lots of contacts in the area. He did a lot of work in the area. And so we said, okay, rather than being a generalist, specialists always make more money. And it's always easier to get business if you're a specialist. So we niched him into the market and positioned him as an expert in that particular area, which had another effect, of course, because aged care, as we well know, is a rapidly growing industry as the population grows. So what we did was we interviewed not only his clients, but a lot of his colleagues who are experts in aged care, people like solicitors, other accountants, and created a white paper, which you can see on the right over here, which positioned him in his market. So we took him from being a generalist to being a specialist, which then meant that any of his referral sources could then basically hand out this white paper and say, listen, you need to come and see him because he's a specialist. And then what that also did was it allowed him to work more closely with people like United Care to actually run seminars with them, bringing in clients. And then one of the last things we did with him recently was we set up a big joint venture with Probus, which is an association of retired business people. It's a worldwide association, but we set up an association with them in Australia so that they could cross-promote him. So that's an example of positioning yourself in a market and becoming unique and becoming distinct in your market, and not being a me too. All right, let's talk about the positioning ladder. So how businesses traditionally bring in clients? Well, a lot of businesses rely on word of mouth, and that's fine. But if we look at the ladder over here, a business that markets itself is going to be twice as effective as a business that does absolutely nothing down here, okay? So the very fact that you do some marketing is going to give you some form of greater effectiveness. But marketing alone is not enough. Marketing is actually a passive exercise. If you actually go out and prospect, know exactly who your target market is, and go out and reach out and target them directly, you get a 3 times multiplier effect on your efficiency and the ability to bring in business. If you move up to sales and actively have a sales process that converts well, you get a 4 times efficiency on somebody that does nothing. When you move into the area of relationships, when we're talking about when you've actually sold something to somebody, it's much easier to upsell them, keep selling more stuff to them, finding out other opportunities within the organization. That is forming on the basis of relationships. So you've already made the sale, you've done the hard work to get in the door. Now it's a case of broadening out that relationship. And if you do that, you get a multiplier effect again. But all of that is really pushing your stuff out there. Your push. It's hard work on your part. The pull starts when you start getting referrals from people. Now, a referral is still somewhat passive because, in my experience, somebody will say, oh, look, I've given your name to Fred, and you hope like hell that Fred's going to call you. And the chances are Fred is not going to call you. So a referral, while it still gives you a leverage factor, is still somewhat passive. Where it becomes much more powerful is when somebody recommends you and says, listen, I think that Lynn over there is going to be really great at putting in your physical network infrastructure. And not only do I think Lynn, and I think Lynn is so good that I'm actually going to ring Lynn and ring you and put the two of you together. That is a recommendation. And that's far more powerful. And then we get to positioning. Positioning is being the specialist, the guru at the top of the mountain. So that's when someone comes to you and says, okay, what can you do for me? So if you're positioned correctly as a leader in your field, then a lot of the heavy lifting gets done for you, because you'll be 10 times more effective than somebody who has absolutely no positioning in the marketplace. Which is why when we work with our clients, we're striving to go up the ladder all the way to that place of positioning. And I'll talk about how you actually go about positioning yourself in a few slides. Anybody got any questions on that? Does it make sense? I can see some nods. So this is the cycle of client acquisition. So we start here at the top where we've got marketing, and marketing is passive. It is a one-to-many approach. So you're basically using a shotgun and you're shoving stuff out into the marketplace and you're hoping that somebody tweaks. But from marketing, we move into more direct prospecting. Prospecting, once you've got a qualified prospect, you then move into the sales process. Once they become a client, you then move into relationships. Once you've got a relationship, you hope that people will refer you. Once you've got referrals, you move on to the recommendation, and the whole cycle keeps repeating itself. And in the middle of all of this is positioning. So the better you're positioned, the easier all of this gets. So when we work with clients, this is our methodology called the MPS Acquisition Advantage System. And the biggest mistake that we see with people is that they think marketing, prospecting, and selling are discrete activities, and they're not discrete activities. Each one of these things supports the other. So your marketing supports your prospecting, because and I'll give you an example. So we put out a lot of content on LinkedIn and our newsletter and Facebook. So when I pick up the phone and call somebody that I've never spoken to on LinkedIn, I've got their phone number, I found it on LinkedIn, they've usually seen something of ours and they actually know who we are. So the marketing side actually positions me and it becomes a warm call. So when I'm prospecting, I'm actually not making cold calls. I'm actually making warm calls. And the prospecting allows me to qualify them. Are they likely to be someone that I can help or not help? And that helps in the sales process if they're a qualified prospect. And the marketing that we do positions us as a thought leader and expert in our space. But the real power of leverage comes if we use all three of those systems. So the mistake is that a lot of people just use marketing. A lot of people just prospect cold and they just make cold call after cold call. And a lot of people try to sell without any form of positioning, which is really quite a difficult place to be in. So let's look at the marketing triangle, and we call it the demand triangle. So there are three major questions that we ask everybody when they start working with us. What do you do? Who do you do it for? And how do you actually make money? And you need to be crystal clear on those three things, because if you're not crystal clear on those things, you're going to take an absolutely scattergun approach to business development. And we say to people, you cannot be a jack of all trades and be the master of none. You have to be a specialist in what you do. So if you are crystal clear, you will be far more successful. Now, let's look at this first bit over here. What do you do? The problems and the outcomes. You really have to look at this through your client's eyes. This is about having deep compassion and understanding of your client's issues and the outcomes that they want, the problems they have and the outcomes they want. And you really need to narrow this down. The biggest mistake that we see people make is they say, we say, what can you do? I can solve all sorts of different problems. The problem with that is that if you solve all sorts of different problems, you confuse the marketplace. The narrower you can get with what you actually say you do, the more success you will have. Now, that's not to say that, you just stick with one thing, but you get your foot in the door with one thing, and then you broaden it out which comes down to that previous slide over here, where we talked about referrals and recommendations and relationships. So if there was really one thing that your clients want from you, what would that be? You really need to sit down and think about what is the one major problem that you can solve for your clients, and what is the one major outcome that you can get them. And think in terms of left brain and right brain, tangible and intangible. So when we think of outcomes, what is a tangible outcome that you can get? So could you reduce their payroll by a certain percentage? That's tangible. Could you increase the number of sales that they make, the conversion rate, by a certain percentage? That's tangible. And intangible is something that is an emotional outcome for them. So what would an emotional outcome be? It could be along the lines of, I feel happy, I feel satisfied, I have a better status, I'm going to get some recognition, which means that I'm going to get some promotion. So what are the tangibles and the intangibles? The who is it for is really important, because when we talk to people, we say, okay, who's your market? And people say everybody. And I go, if it's everybody, it's nobody. The more specific you can get with the market that you're dealing with, the easier it is going to be to find people. So for instance, the financial planner is looking for very specific people in aged care. So somebody in aged care is, they're going to actually be a couple of markets. They're going to be people probably in their 50s who are looking at their parents going into aged care. And there are going to be people in their 70s and 80s who are going into aged care. So it's a defined market. It's actually reasonably easy to target people like that. If you're dealing with a company, what is the size of the company? Where is it located? Who are the people involved that you need to deal with? The psychographic is, what are the values and beliefs that these people have? You know, what do they want out of life? What are they looking for? So to give you an example of a demographic, one of our clients is a stockbroker, and he says his demographic is people who have a minimum of $250,000 to invest in the stock market. The psychographic is that they have to have an awareness of risk and willing to take advice. So that's demographic and a psychographic. And then traffic and conversion. So it's all very well to say that I have a particular marketplace that I want to get to, but can I actually target them? And what is it going to cost me to target them? So if you know that you deal with people in the corporate world, for instance, who need leadership training, and the company needs to be a particular size, and you're dealing with the CEO, then it's reasonably easy to target them on, say, LinkedIn. If you're dealing with something more in the consumer market, like, interestingly enough, the stockbroker, he gets most of his leads off Facebook, even though you would think that people on Facebook wouldn't necessarily be in his marketplace. Then it comes down to the conversion rate. So you're getting the traffic, but how much do you actually convert out of that traffic? So is it a good traffic source? And are those people actually good prospects to becoming clients? So what is the economics of matching up the message, the market, and the media? So what does it cost you to get a client in, and how much do you make over the lifetime of that client?
Anyone wants to share some insights, something that just, I don't know, had a light bulb moment or something like that? Please share it in the chat. Be interesting to see.
So let's move on to the format system. This is one of the most powerful concepts that we teach. It was codified originally by Bernice McCarthy in the 1960s as the basis of how we all learn and process information. And we use it as the basis of all the communication that we do, written and verbal. And using this particular system ensures that you speak and write in terms that your audience will relate to. And if you do this, you will actually engage far more people and have them come on a journey with you in your communication. So let's talk about the 4 quadrants. They're numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, and they're numbered in that particular order for a reason. So the first quadrant, the why. So let me ask the question, put it in the chat. How many of you need to know why you need to be interested in something before you would listen? What's in it for you? Why should I give you the time of day? Just put it in the chat. What, nobody in the white quadrant? I'm surprised, okay? How many of you in the what quadrant? You're information junkies. You want to get all the information you can, and you're not really concerned about why this should be interesting or what you're going to do with it. It's more, the more information I can get, the happier I'm going to be. Knowledge, as far as you're concerned, is power. And a lot of engineers, scientists are like that. So just open up the encyclopedia and get more knowledge. How many people like that?
Yeah.
I'm in quadrant 2. Okay, yes, knowledge is power. Yep, okay. So how many of you are in the how quadrant? And the how quadrant is typically you were in chemistry class in school, and teacher had 2 beakers of chemicals, and before you did anything else, you just shoved them together to see what happened. Oh, nice explosion, this is fantastic. Or, you have a piece of machinery, like the lawnmower, and you pull it apart just to see how it works, and hopefully you can put it back together. You're not interested in the whys, you're not interested in the theory, you're really interested in the practical examples. How many of you in that? And then there's the what if. The what if are the classic entrepreneurs. So before anything else, they've already gone off on some lateral thinking tangent and thinking, okay, what else can I do with this? What else? Oh, I could use it here, I could use it there. They're not that interested in why, they're not interested in the information, they're not interested in pulling it apart. They've just already gone off on all sorts of tangents. Okay, so we've got a couple of 1s and 4s. Now, the interesting thing is we all do all of these things. So it's not an either or approach. The point is, though, when you're talking to somebody, be it an individual or a group, you have no idea where they fit in this preference quadrant, okay? So you always start with the why. Why should I be interested? So why should this person give you the time of day? What's in it for them? Always think in terms of them, not yourself. Then you could move into the what is the information, what's going on, what is the concept behind this, what are the principles, what are the steps, then the how you would do something, and then the outcomes. What are the outcomes that you would get? Now, the interesting thing in sales, in a training situation, I would go through all 4 quadrants. If I was in a sales situation, I would not talk about the what and the how. I would concentrate primarily on the why, because this is about them. What's in it for them? What are the problems they're trying to solve? What are the outcomes that they want to get? So it's the problems and the outcomes, problems and outcomes. At this point, they're not interested in the what, the information, and the how. At some point they will be, but not initially. But what most salespeople do is they get hung up, guess where? On the what. And so they go in and they want to give you the demo, they want to give you the laydown, oh, this is exactly how this thing works. But hang on. I don't even know why I should be interested. I don't even know what the outcome is that I can get. And you're just basically vomiting all over me with all of this other stuff that I'm not interested in. Ever had that happen to you? Yep. Some people have said yes, and I hope you've never done it to anybody, but that's another story. Okay, let's look at demand generation.
Rashid, you may just also want to say that what's happening if you're organized in quadrant 1, if your preference quadrant 1, you're not necessarily good in the how. So
yep.
it's
okay. So we have preferences, as Barbara pointed out. So if we're very strong here, we're usually not that interested in the diagonal opposite. Okay, whatever the diagonal opposite is. It's not to say that we're ever exclusively any one of these things, but we all have somewhat preferences. I mean, I can tell you my preference is here, the what. Okay, so give me more information, give me more, I'm an information sponge. And it's not necessarily that I'm even going to do anything with it, but I like the information. And what I've had to do is I'd had to force myself out of that and say, okay, knowledge is not power, action is power. So, especially in when we're building a business, what is it I'm going to do with this knowledge and how am I actually going to use it? And therefore, if you think about it, if I'm really strong here, well, guess what? I don't really think about what I'm going to do with it here. So I have to force myself into thinking, what am I going to do with it here? And if I'm not going to do something with it, then don't do it. There's no point in clogging up your brain for no good reason. So let's look at demand generation. And where have I gone? 6. So at any one time, I have lost something.
Page 6, 14.
Yep, got it. Thank you. All right. So people buy when they're ready, not when you need to make a sale. And most people target just the tip of the iceberg. People are already looking for a solution and ready to buy. And that's a very small percentage of the market up here. Okay. And that's really where most marketing will target. So the problem with that, though, is there's a whole bunch of people down here that could be open. They could be interested. Maybe they don't even know you exist. And they will never know you exist because they're not actually looking for a solution. And that's where prospecting comes in and direct marketing comes in. So you send a sales letter to somebody very directly, or you pick up the phone, or you send them a message very directly, one-on-one. That is targeting all of these people in this sort of area over here, which is much bigger. So think of the iceberg. Here's the waterline. Here's a very small part up here that most people target, but there's this big piece down here that most people don't target. And the reason they don't target it is usually rejection. Oh, I can't phone somebody. I can't reach out to somebody. I will get rejected. Well, hang on. If you truly believe that you have something of value to them, that they would benefit from them, are you actually doing them a favor by not sending them something and not picking up the phone or not asking them, hey, listen, I believe that you could, knowing your industry, I believe that you could be facing these particular issues. If you are facing any of those issues, is it worthwhile having a conversation about it? Most people won't do that because they're afraid of rejection. But I can tell you that if you do it correctly, the way we teach you to do it, you will get engagement. People will actually thank you for picking up the phone and having that conversation with them. So marketing, once again, is passive. Prospecting is active. Marketing leaves things to chance. You're waiting for your prospect to raise their hands and call you, which is fantastic when they do, because somebody who calls you is more than twice as likely to buy than somebody that you reach out to if you haven't done any form of positioning first. But prospecting, being active, allows you to control your pipeline. You target people who don't know you exist and put them into your sales pipeline. Now, having said that, if you're going to prospect, you do need to research your prospects. I can't tell you how many times I get emails from, that's a canned email from somewhere, wherever it is in the world, usually subcontinent, saying they can help me with something along SEO or something. They haven't even looked at my profile. They have no idea what we do, and they're just sending out this blanket thing. And obviously, they're going to get short shrift. They're just going to get deleted. But if somebody rings me and says, hey, listen, I believe that you may have a specific type of problem. Are you open to looking for ways that you could solve that? I'll at least have a conversation with them. Now, whether I do something or not doesn't matter, but at least I'm going to have a conversation with them. So I think most of you would be on our newsletter list. Anybody not? So you would know that we send out 2 newsletters a week. We send out a newsletter which is written, and now we do a video once a week, so Wednesday and Friday. That goes up on LinkedIn, it goes up on Facebook. We don't happen to use Twitter or Instagram, but a lot of our clients do. But what this does is it positions ourselves as thought leaders in what we do. And if you look at, and what it does is it's actually brought in a significant number of clients over the years. And I'll give you one quick example. So one Christmas a few years ago, I got this phone call from a chap. And the first thing he said was, "Oh, Rashid, I have to apologize." And I said, "What are you apologizing for? I have no idea who you are. I've never spoken to you before." And he said, "Look, I've been on your newsletter list for 2 years. And I kept deleting them. I'd see them. I saw your name, but I kept deleting them until I saw a headline, you know, a subject line that tweaked my interest." And he said, "Look, I've got a sales problem. This is my problem. Can you help me?" He was a managing director of a multinational subsidiary in this country. So we spent a day working with his clients, and he got a result that he wanted, and he was really happy. Fast forward a couple of months, and Barbara said to me, "Well, look, you know, have you kept in touch with him?" And there's a point to the story later on, which I'll get to, but have you kept in touch with him? And I said, "Look, you know, we did a good job. He was happy. He's on our newsletter list. Why do I need to keep phoning him?" She said, "Listen, we're going to Canberra. He was in Campbelltown, and we were going to be going past." And she said, pick up the phone, call him, sit down with him." I said, "Oh, no, why would I want to do that?" Okay. Anyway, I did. So we sat down, and at that point, they were going into a major trade show, manufacturing week, and they were going to be spending something like $50,000 on the booth. This was massive investment for them. And they said, "Oh, you know, what can you do to help us?" And we said, "Look, we do a lot of work in the trade show space, and we did all of these things, and we set up a whole bunch of stuff for them." And basically that engagement then parlayed into another year's engagement with $100,000 at the end of it. So that comes from positioning, having people on your newsletter list, constantly talking to them, constantly following up, bringing in business. That was one example. We've got lots of examples like that. So when you're prospecting, you've got to pick up the phone. You've got to send out the messages. You've got to send out the physical mail. It doesn't matter how you do this, but you must reach out in multiple ways. And you have to be everywhere that your clients could be when they're looking for a solution. And the reason that we position ourselves as well as prospect is it makes the whole prospecting deal easier. Because when you phone somebody, you are forming a relationship with somebody. When you just send something out as a shotgun, you're not actually forming a relationship. It's, you know, you have no control over whether they read it, they don't read it, what they do, what they don't do with it. But if you actually send something to somebody, and notice I've actually got fax. Fax actually works. We've had clients come off fax, believe it or not. People say, "Oh, fax doesn't work." But fax does work, depending on the company that you're dealing with. SMS is one of the most powerful things depending on the audience. And I'll give you an example. So a few years ago, we were doing a joint venture with somebody, and we were targeting plumbers for a particular marketing package. And we had tried sending them letters in the mail. We had tried phoning their offices, but usually it was a home office, and nobody picked up the phone until we realized that every tradesperson is basically sitting on their phone, mobile phone. And so we started an SMS campaign, and we got something like a 25% response rate just from an SMS campaign. Yep, the health domain, GPs, they work on fax, absolutely. Pharmacies still work on fax. So there are a lot of people who still do this. In fact, one of our clients came off of fax. I sent him, he was speaking at, we knew people who were speaking at National Manufacturing Week, and we had fax numbers for all of these companies, and this is a few years ago, and we sent faxes out. This chap responded to the fax. I met him at the trade show. He was giving a talk. I was one of the few people in the audience. Started the conversation. 2 or 3 years went by, and he suddenly raised his hand and he said, "Look, he needed some help." We gave him the help. A few more years went by, and then last year, he basically raised his hand again, and now we're working again together. So every now and again, he keeps coming back because he wants something in addition, but it all came off of facts. The lumpy mail, physical mail, can be really affected because nobody gets letters anymore. So if you put something physical in the mail, especially if it's something lumpy, and one of the best examples I saw was somebody who had this bejeweled elephant. It was like a big paperweight. And he would put it in a box and he would send it to people and he'd say, what's the elephant in the room, with a little covering letter. And he was getting about a 50% response rate because it is just unusual. So depending on what you're doing, physical mail can be incredibly effective. So the question is, how often should you keep following up?
And how long for?
This is a thing from Microsoft. And if you notice, it says most people give up after the first, second, or even third contact. 89% give up after the fourth contact. But most people buy after the 12th or more contact. The longest somebody has been on our list before becoming a client was 10 years. The shortest is a couple of days, okay? So, and it could be anywhere in that period of time. And the biggest mistake people make is they stop calling people, they stop being in contact with people, they don't nurture the relationship. So I know people, you know, there are maybe 100, 150 people that we keep in contact with on a regular basis or semi-regular basis, at least once every 3 to 6 months. Theoretically, it should be every 3 months because after 90 days, people will forget you. But if you just keep in contact with people, you will get more business because when they're ready to do something, you're going to be the person who popped up in front of them. And I can't tell you how many times I've had, you know, we sent out the newsletter and I would have a phone call or I'd have an email back saying, my goodness, we were just talking about this particular topic and your email just happened to lob in. So the more you contact people and add value, talk about them. You know, you need to be interested in people. So I know the kids' names or how many kids people have. I know that, you know, Barbara reminds me of their birthdays. And in fact, there's no reason not to be reminded of birthdays. If they're on LinkedIn, LinkedIn will tell you. If you're on Facebook, Facebook will tell you. Do little things, be interested in people. And you'll be surprised at how much more business you will get because you are interested and you are adding value. You're not calling them because you want business. You're calling them because you're genuinely interested in them. And so you have to keep nurturing. But then when you see an opportunity and they say, hey, listen, you know, they're talking about a particular problem, you have to say, okay, you've got that particular problem. You've talked about this particular problem. Are you interested in solving it? If you are interested in solving it, can I talk about a solution? So there's no point in just talk. There has to be a point where you say, okay, you said there's a problem. I have a solution. Are you interested in solving it? Because unless you are proactive in saying that, most people will not actually, you know, say, hey, listen, can you help me with this thing? And that's a lesson that we've all had to learn the hard way. You know, otherwise you just keep talk for no reason. So this is an example of a client. He's a leadership coach who works primarily in the education system. So he is absolutely passionate about raising student learning outcomes. And he does it by raising the level of the teaching in schools. And I'll go to the structure that we put to him because it's an example of how you bring all of this together and how we do it for our clients. So one of the first things we did was we actually interviewed his clients. Now his clients are senior principals, you know, principals of very large private schools. At that point, they were all in Victoria. And I would pick up the phone and I would interview these principals. And sometimes it was an hour, 2-hour conversation in school holidays. These people are still working, where they would tell me exactly what it is that they loved about the program, what they liked, what they didn't like, where it could be improved, etc. And then we used our product alignment canvas, which is this, to figure out what services they liked, what they didn't like, where it could be improved, where the value was. And one of the things that we realized from that was he had a 1-year program, and he was charging $25,000 for this 1-year program. And these principals said, look, 1 year isn't enough. We can't actually implement this in 1 year. We actually need more time. And so we said, well, how much more time do you want? We didn't assume, we asked them. They said 3 years. I said, okay, if it's 3 years, are you willing to pay 75,000? They said, yes. So in one fell swoop, we took a 1-year program that he would have to resell every year to a 3-year program that he only had to sell once. Not only that, but we realized that he had another program where he would actually do a huge, very complex survey, 360 survey of all of the students to get feedback from the students, which would then be munged into this complex report system. And he used to bundle it as part of the main program. We hived that off. So now he runs that as a standalone for schools that A, maybe can't afford the whole enchilada, or B, just want that particular area for whatever, because that's what they're interested in. So we actually gave him a couple of streams of income. From that, we then created a white paper, a very comprehensive white paper, which goes into the why, the what, the how, and the what if of improving student learning outcomes. We use that as positioning to send out to a prospect list. Now, he's a school. His target is schools. We know where the schools are. You can buy a list of school principals and leadership teams. So we bought a list and we would send the white paper. He had a book which we would send out as positioning in the physical mail. We would follow that up with email, and we would follow that up with phone calls. He was coming up to a major conference in Victoria where he had actually bought a booth, and we positioned him correctly. We told everybody that was coming that he would be there and that they should make an appointment to see him. And when he arrived, a school principal walked up to him and he said, look, we've never met. I've got all your stuff. I've spoken to other principals who work with you. Here's my money. I want to sign up. That is the power of positioning. So let's move into the area of sales. So all of that was marketing leading up to positioning. But nothing happens until somebody buys something, okay? And nothing happens until you actually sell. So when we work with people in sales, we say, okay, the first thing you need to do is to understand your prospect's world. Where did they come from? What are they facing now? Where do they want to get to? And what are the obstacles in the way? Because if there are no obstacles in the way, and they don't have a future aspiration, they're not going to do anything. But you've also got to realize that we all have problems, but we're not willing to spend money on solving those problems. We're not willing to spend the effort on solving those problems. So you've got to figure out that what is it that you do for people that they aspire to, that they will actually pay for. So if we look at traditional consulting, because most of us here are consultants, the job, you go in and you say, hey, listen, what are you facing? Why am I here? What are you facing? Let me diagnose your problems, all right? Essentially, though, you're going on a fishing expedition. You're hoping that they're going to have a problem. And that's not what we recommend if you are a thought leader consultant. It's akin to, you're going in to see your GP and you're saying, hey, listen, I don't know why I'm here. And the GP then has to ask you 20 questions to figure out why you're even there and diagnose a problem, versus I go to the GP and say, hey, listen, I've got a pain in my elbow and you need to look at this, okay? So the GP knows exactly what to diagnose. But that's still assuming that you're going to go and see the GP. But if you are going to prospect, you need to have a very good idea of what your clients could be facing, which leads us to the next slide. Now, this is a different approach, and this is an approach, this particular methodology we learned from Matt Church and Thought Leaders, which we're part of. And it's one where you have to have a deep compassion and knowing what your clients really want. You have to understand the problems that they have. And you have to disclose your expertise first and show a level of understanding on how you can fix their key issues, assuming that they're facing them. And you're not going in on a fishing exercise. You're not going in and say, hey, listen, tell me all your problems and I'll find you a solution. That's not the way this works. You're going in there to have a conversation and say, listen, when I work with people like you in your particular field, I know that other people face these sorts of issues. If you face these sorts of issues, are you open to looking at how you can solve them? So to do this, you have to know a few things. You have to know what the known spoken problems are. I know that in certain industries, if you spoke to 100 people in your target market and they said, this is the biggest challenge that we have. If you know this, that's the known spoken. What will they openly speak about? Openly speak about the fact that they don't have enough leads, or maybe their salespeople aren't performing, or something else is going on. But then there's also stuff that's happening under the surface. What is it that they haven't openly voiced? Maybe some of them might be ashamed to admit it. Maybe what really keeps them awake at night, but they won't say, oh, well, maybe I'm not quite the leader that I think I am. Maybe I'm not empathetic. Maybe I'm something, whatever it is, okay? So you've got to know what they will speak about, and you've got to know under the surface what's going on. And then you look at the value model of what you're going to be doing. And the value model is one of four things. It's either more money, more time, more status or recognition, or more lifestyle. So what is it that they aspire to? So for instance, one of our value models, if I go back here, is this. This is effectively a value model. So we start with marketing and we go all the way up to positioning. So it's each one of these things is getting more and more and more effective as we go up the line. So what is the value that you're going to give them? The unknown, unspoken is what is the IP that you're going to bring to the table? What are you going to do to solve that particular problem that they don't even know that they don't know? So I'm looking at one of the comments here. The known, unspoken in business broking is that the owner deals in cash. Okay, that's interesting. So now let's type and tell me why you believe that. While he's doing that, the next thing is, once you've figured out that there is a problem and they admit that there's a problem, and you need to invite them to ask whether they want to solve it. Because if you can genuinely solve the issues and you're the expert they need, you need to tell them. And you need to get a commitment that they're going to move forward. Because this is where most people fall down in consulting sales. We do this, we go to the value model, we talk about what we can do for them, but then we walk away. We never actually ask them for the business. And if you don't ask them for the business, what happens is that you walk away feeling unfulfilled. You feel that why haven't they bought? They're going, hang on, there was a solution here, but I was never actually asked whether I wanted to buy this thing. And so they feel that they haven't got value out of this either. Everybody actually loses out of this. So if you can genuinely solve the problem, you owe it to them to ask them and say, okay, let's get a commitment. Let's set a date, get a deposit, whatever it is to move the sale forward. Now, if it's a large complex sale, it might be just a commitment to have another meeting with a particular outcome in mind. If it's something like a smaller job, I mean, it could be even up to $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. It might be simply or selling a day of consulting. Commit to the day, pay the money, let's lock it in. That's a commitment. Most people won't do that though. So let's approach buyers that want to buy. This is really quite interesting. So sellers and buyers are often start the relationships at cross purposes, okay? Most people, when they're selling, go in there with features and benefits. That's what we've been taught to concentrate on. So that's where we start the conversation, hoping that we're going to get interest, okay? However, buyers don't think like that. Buyers, when we're buying something, the first thing we think about is, do I like this person? Do I even have any form of rapport with this person? Do I even care? Okay, if this person is really obnoxious, I'm not even going to have a conversation with them. So the phrase, I don't care how much you know until I know how much you care, is something that comes into its own here. And remember, we all buy on emotion and justify with logic. And I don't care whether you're the CEO of a large multinational or just, buying something from somebody. We buy on emotion and justify by logic. And the justify by logic could be to ourselves. It could be to a family member. It could be to our boss. It could be even to society at large, depending on who you are, okay? So when you're going in to sell something as a consultant, you need to be looking at why would this person want to do business with you? It's talking about their problems. It's being empathetic. It's being compassionate about them. It's not about going in there and pitching what you're doing, because nobody likes to be pitched to. Now, what happens though is the buyer is thinking in the beginning, do I like you? And do I want to do business with you? And then if they want to do business with you, as the time and sale moves on, they're looking more and more at what it is you're going to be doing and the logic behind it. So they need to start looking at the what and the how. Whereas the seller is going, he's already done the what and the how, because that's where we started. And now we're moving into the emotion of, you know, how good you're going to feel at the end of this thing. And so what happens though, is that the buyer is going, hey, I'm looking at the rational side of this and I'm asking you questions. The seller is going, oh, I'm getting a feeling of rejection, and start feeling, what do they feel? They feel that
they can't connect.
They can't connect, or they feel, or they get defensive. Okay, why are you suddenly asking me all these questions? I've told you all of this stuff. And therefore this cross purposes happens. And so it's just something to be aware of. Sell the way people want to buy. And so some of the mistakes that we see is people wing it. People wing it with their sales. They don't have a structure. If you have a structure and you use a structure as simple as the format, start with the why, the what, the how, and the what if, but stick mainly with the why and the what if in the beginning sections, you will do a lot better than somebody who goes in starting with the what and the how, because at this point, your prospect doesn't even really care. Be really clear as to the value you provide, and also be really clear as to the level of the organization that you're dealing with. Because, and I'll give you an example. So a lot of our clients sell SaaS type products, and they go in, so this is an IT type product, and they go in and they pitch to the IT department. The IT department actually is not the person they should be pitching to, because very often this is a strategic sale. It could be something that increases the way the company does business. So for example, one of our clients does a retail product which helps stores maximize the sales per person in the store, and works out exactly how many people you need on the shop floor when you need them to maximize sales. But it is a SaaS product. So he was going in and selling it to the IT department and that sort of level. But the IT department don't care. The business cares. So you've got to sell it to the business level. But you've got to make sure that the IT department is on board. Otherwise, they will turn around and say, oh, look, this is not something that we need, or we can do it ourselves for a fraction of the cost, or whatever the reason is. Because usually people will kibosh a sale because there's some form of fear. There's fear they're going to lose their job, they're going to look stupid.
So they don't have the authority to actually.
And they don't have the authority to buy.
That's, you know,
So you've really got to understand the self-interest of the buyer, and self-interest always comes into it. I don't care whether you're the CEO of a multinational, there's always self-interest. And the interesting thing about self-interest is the bigger the organization, the greater the disparity between the self-interest of the person making the decision and the self-interest and the interest of the company. If it's you and me as consultants, we own our own businesses, it's obviously the same. What's good for the company is good for us. But in a large organization, it's very often quite different. And I'll give you another example very quickly. So a client of ours helps manufacturers, food manufacturers, improve their factory efficiency. And he was going in and selling at the plant manager level. And these plant managers in Australia were all basically giving him short shrift, principally because they did not want to be shown up. Because in Australia, manufacturing efficiency is around the 30-35% mark. Worldwide, German efficiency is around the 85-90% mark. There's a huge discrepancy. Plant managers who've been there for 20 years don't want to be shown up. Now, as soon as we switched him to talking to CEOs and owners of these plants, the conversation completely changed. The owners are really interested. But what was also happening was that they would go to the plant manager and say, oh, look, we should do this. Plant manager is saying no, because the plant manager doesn't want to look bad. So you've really got to understand the nuances of a complex sale, which is something that we really, when we work with clients who sell to larger organizations, we really drill and skill them in this. And so you've got to explain your value proposition to everybody in the organization. So wrapping up, what's next? Anybody got any questions before we wrap up? We've got about 3 minutes.
Sue has got one. Can you just unmute her maybe? And so Sue
I will unmute. I will stop the share for a second, and I will.
Otherwise I can unmute, I think.
Okay. Allow participants to unmute themselves. Okay. Anybody who wants to unmute themselves can unmute themselves.
Sue, please you go first.
Okay. It's actually immaterial. I'm happy not to focus on it because you've answered the question in subsequent.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, great.
Anybody else? Toby, good to see you. All right. So
Rashid, always good to see you. Sorry, I was on mute there.
That's all right.
Yeah, no questions. It was great to have, because as you know, I've been through a similar journey to you about this material, and it was a good recap. Thank you. I made quite a few notes for my new business, so thank you. As always, well presented. Leave more time for questions there, you bugger.
Yeah, I know.
I know. Okay.
I'd like to make one comment, Rashid and Barbara. I'm a monotasker. The moment I'm typing a question, I'm not listening to you. So is it a good idea to have the conversation in the chat and therefore switch me off from the content? Something to consider.
Thanks for that. There will be a recording made available for all of you. So that might help.
Yes, indeed. Anyway, so as I said at the beginning when we started, there's nothing to sell, and I'm going to stick to that. But we will, obviously use this as a lead generation exercise, and we'll offer you an opportunity to accelerate your progress. So we're going to give people some of our time to help you get clarity and a path forward to bringing in new clients in the next 90, 120 days. And to do that, what we're offering is effectively a launch call where we'll go deeply into how you can align and apply our marketing and prospecting and sales framework to start building that community of perfect future customers. And we'll look at how you can generate leads and sell your services to people more consistently, effectively, and easily. And we'll create a launch plan so that you know exactly what to do, when to do it, and how to approach your ideal clients. And look, we're doing it free. And some of you obviously would wonder why we do this. Well, let's be frank. Some of you will want us to help you implement. Some of you won't, and that's absolutely fine. We know that over a period of time, every one of our clients has come to us because of the value that we have added over the years. And that's what we enjoy doing. And so we're happy to do that. And it's also, dare I say it, a thank you for being on the call, on the webinar. You've given up an hour of your time. We really do hope that you got a tremendous amount of value. But once again, watching all of this is one thing, because I know I can speak from experience. I'm a great consumer of all of this stuff. But unless you actually take action, nothing will happen. Action beats, there's that saying, you can go ready, aim, fire, or you can go ready, fire, aim. Okay. And one of the things that I really have to force myself to do is to go ready, fire, aim. And sometimes making an external commitment, because we were working with another group and they were actually mentoring us. So we all have mentors, and and I sort of had a throwaway comment that I would do this webinar starting on the 17th of June, and then did nothing about it. And Barbara happened to pick up on that comment. And she said, oh, well, we better do this, hadn't we? So this is now the fourth one we've done because we made a commitment and we actually took action. So my wish for you would be take action. Whether you do something with us or not, doesn't matter. Just do something. get it out there, do something. Fair enough? So if you'd like to, and look, I will follow every one of you up just to get some feedback and see how you're going. But in the meantime, by all means, drop me a note if you'd like to have that session. We'll arrange a time in the next couple of weeks. So that's it for us. Any last comments before we sign off? That'd be great.
Great session. Greetings from Ballina. We had conversation probably 8-9 months ago.
We
Rashid,
did.
on the phone. And my business is hit hard. You know, it's immigration. Immigration is dead. I want to thank you very much. It's awesome, you know, and I can see the passion you guys have, both of you, and you give it away and generally have an interest. And, you know, that's awesome. It's really nice to see that. Thank you very much for that.
Thanks, Thomas. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you very much.
Thanks, guys. Great session.
All righty. I will leave you, and well, we will love you and leave you. And no doubt we will connect soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Rashid.